PodcastCoug Season 3, Episode 8.
You're listening to the PodcastCoug Radio Network with your host, James Laurie. The PodcastCoug is your weekly Coug On Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. And now, here is your host, PodcastCoug.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the PodcastCoug. I am James Laurie, the PodcastCoug, and you are listening to the PodcastCoug, where we are all things Cougar football. 30 minutes of Coug Talk, where we're talking about Stanford and our upcoming Dad's Weekend game against Cal, the Berkeley boys. You know, we're King of the North, right? King of the North. Sounds good. We did it last year, too. Didn't get very far. I mean, we didn't achieve the King of the North, but about a year ago this time, we were right there at the cusp, and here we are. And if you think about last Saturday, where both teams beat its rival, all right? Cal Berkeley beat the Dogs, which is our rival, and we beat Stanford, which is Berkeley's rival, right? So here we are. It is another great weekend. The Pac-12 North, so we're top of the Pac-12 North, and actually the best record all alone in the North and the best record in the entire Pac-12. We're controlling our destiny in our division and picking up another signature win against Stanford. We've got David Shaw's name. That's 3 in a row against the Cardinal. I almost made it, by the way. PodcastCoug almost made it down to Palo Alto. I was thinking about it and almost went and pulled the trigger. Didn't go, but I'll tell you, what a game. What an incredible game. That was a really difficult first half, sitting through that, thinking, here we go again. But, Minshew's prevailed time and time again. He has not failed us. Sensational again. Gardner Minshew completing 40 of 50 passes, 438 yards, 4 touchdowns. And we got that freshman kicker, Blake Mazza, right? Drilled the winning 42-yard field goal to push the Cougs to number 8 past Stanford, 41-38. So we've got our fourth straight win in a row, second straight against a ranked Pac-12 team, and of course we're 7-1. Stanford dropped to 5-3, and we can win the North for the first time in program history, obviously by winning the last 4 of our games, right? So Dogs lost to Cal, right, and the Cougs are the only team in the Pac-12 with one loss in the entire Pac-12. So that is, good going, Leach. I mean, we give a lot of credit to Gardner Minshew, but if it wasn't for Mike Leach, none of this would be happening, right? So King of the North, college football playoff rankings came out, of course, on Tuesday. Like I mentioned, we're number 8. Dogs. University of Washington is out of the top 25, and it just shows you how really meaningless all those polls are, the rankings, up until like week 8, 9, or 10, It just, they don't mean anything. Nobody knows the future. Nobody, right? I mean, you can crystal ball it. Now, granted there's Alabama, right? I mean, that's pretty easy, pretty solid, right? But for the most part, there's no guarantee. And how Washington was in the top 10 for most of the season, and they're out. They're out, right? So anyway, very interesting. Cougs, took a 38-31 lead with about 5 minutes to play. The first lead since the first quarter. Minshew hooked up to Renard Bell for a 3-yard touchdown. Not done yet. Stanford came back on a 10-play, 73-yard, ended up with a 25-yard touchdown from KJ Costello to JJ Arcega-Whiteside to tie it 38-38. And that Whiteside was just picking up, man. The guy is great. And he's definitely going to be playing on Sundays, right? Whiteside ties it at 38-38. From the pass from Costello. And here we go again. Cougs march down to the 25-yard line. It was literally 1 minute left of the game. Really at the end, it was just crazy, right? And here we go with Mazza, his kick of his career so far. He's a freshman now. Remember, the game of the career, 42-yarder, sailed straight right through the uprights. And you know what? We win 3 in a row over Stanford, 7-1 overall. And how great is it to be where we are. Who would have thought, right? It just literally unsurpassed. I mean, nobody had thought this. And here, I mean, literally everybody is picking, we picked 3 or 4 or 5 wins this year, and we had no idea. And it just shows you that, we don't have the ability to, I mean, literally, if everybody knew the future, we just go down to Vegas and gamble away and come home with, I mean, we would be able to pick everything in life. So that's the fun thing about college football, right? I mean, you just don't know, or in sports in general. So, the Cougs have sputtered along the third quarter all year long, right? But we won the third quarter just for the third time this season, outscoring Stanford 7-3. Finally, we got a decent third quarter. And like I said, we outscored them 7-3. David Shaw said that they started prepping for Washington State. This is hard to believe. Did you hear that? His post-game presser, David Shaw said he started preparing for Washington State the day after they lost in Pullman last year. Really? I mean, you would think that they would be preparing for the next team, but literally he has spent a year trying to figure out how he can beat us. And I'll tell you, there were some adjustments that Tracy Clay did in the halftime after half, and we'll talk about that, which is just incredible. But you know what? When Leach hires a coach, he upgrades. Look at Eric Melly, the running backs coach, right? His recruiting, right? And the players we have now, and even Steve Spurrier Jr. I mean, did you catch that Pac-12 drive the other day? It's posted on Wazoo Watch. What an amazing 8 minutes! If you have not seen that 8-minute clip on the Pac-12 drive, it's about Gardner and our team, and Steve Spurrier is in there. What an amazing 8-minute clip. It is on the Pac-12 network, or just go to Wazoo Watch. The clip's on there. It's just an incredible video, but it shows the talent we have. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. The players we have, every position is an upgrade from last year. Every single one. We thought Alex Grinch, that's it. He's leaving to Ohio State. We got the upgrade. Tracy Clays. Couldn't be more happier. The guy deserves a raise, right? So look at our offensive line and our defensive lines. Both an upgrade, right? And let's not downplay the consistency that this class has, that we blew away the Oregon Ducks. That's 4 years in a row, consistent, right? Washington State is no longer lucky to be in the conversation. We belong in the conversation, and we are. So here we are. It's our final month of the regular season, going into November, right? Washington State's, we're sitting great at 7-1. And we've got 4 games left. 3 out of 4 are at Martin. Couldn't be happier than that. We're literally at Martin. We've won, 16 out of our last 17 games at Martin Stadium. Everything is set up for Washington State to make a serious run at the Pac-12 North crown. And here's why. Since 2015, November games in Pullman have been good. Right? They've been good to the Cougs, except for our meltdowns against Washington in 2016 on that 45-17 blowout by the Dogs in 2016. But for the most part, we have been very good in November at home. And one could argue that we've gone through the toughest part of our schedule, right? We've got Utah, Oregon, and USC and Stanford. It's all of them are behind us. Right? Think about that. Utah, Oregon, USC, Stanford, all behind us. And I'm not, who's disappointed with the USC loss, right? I mean, it's better to lose to USC in the Coliseum than to lose to Oregon State, right? So, unless you're Alabama, it's really, 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 really hard to run the table. Okay. And so if we were 8-1 right now, I would be concerned, because who is going to run the table except for Alabama? And so I'm fine with that USC loss, right? I mean, better than Oregon State, right? So our remaining schedule looks incredible, and especially with that meltdown in Seattle last Saturday, the Dogs losing to Cal, and the realization that Browning, he just really... what's going on there? He looks like a really good Mountain West quarterback. And if you think about it, Peterson was recruiting Brown when Peterson was, this is way back, when Peterson was at Boise State, he was recruiting Jake Browning. Okay, he wasn't in the Pac-12. Peterson was recruiting Browning when he was at Boise State. And I'm not sure that Browning would be the ideal fit for Pac-12. I'm sorry, with all due respect, I just don't see him even close to some of our other Pac-12 quarterbacks. And it's very unfortunate because, there's been a meltdown in Seattle. When you listen to, sports radio, KJR, or ESPN 710 Cairo, they're out of the top 25, and how many weeks went by, they were in the top 10, and we were not even in the top 25, right? Means nothing until week 10, right? Until the CFP rankings come out. So there's a lot of lessons here to be learned, but I wish the best for Browning, and I don't see, the Huskies have got Stanford on Saturday, and of course they've got Oregon State, and then they have a bye, and then they've got Washington State. So they also can end up going to the Rose Bowl if they win out. Now, if they lose to Stanford on Saturday, then it doesn't matter who wins the Apple Cup. If we lose the AC, right? If we win, obviously we've got Cal, we've got Arizona, but if we lose to the Huskies in the AC, if Montlake loses Saturday against Stanford, it doesn't matter. Right, we're still a contender in the Pac-12 championship. So that's kind of how those things fall out. It's just obviously one game at a time. I said it last week. Or we're 1-0. We're 1-0, not 7-1. Right, we got one game. You've heard it a million times. It's a cliche to take one game at a time, but forget that. Think about that. We are 1-0, right, and we only have one game. We've got to beat, and Leach always talks about getting better. Oh my gosh, it's like, haven't we arrived yet? He's pushing these kids to always get better and better and better. It's like, okay, how far until we're not good enough, right? So just amazing circumstances that are going on right now. But it's all interesting. It's all interesting. It's all fun. And hey, we're going to be right back. Speaking about Cal, we're going to be right back. And we're going to talk about the Berkeley boys, Cal, the Golden Bears, next, right here on the Podcast Coug.
Hey, Coug fans. You're podcasting with James Laurie and the Podcast Coug Radio Network. The Podcast Coug is your weekly Coug on Demand show, featuring all things Cougar football in Washington State. To help you get through the week, hit the subscribe button or check us out on iTunes, the App Store, iOS, Google Play, Stitcher, or at PodcastCoug.com.
Welcome back to the second half of the Podcast Coug. And hey, what do you see? You see Berkeley, right? By the way, the Cal game is sold out. And those commercials, halftime, you're watching football on TV, and we've got the Coug commercial, and we've got every Pac-12 or every opponent has their own commercial. My favorite is that UC Berkeley commercial. They go through the campus and they go, what do you see? You see Berkeley. And I really like that. I call these guys the Berkeley boys. The game sold out Saturday, Dad's weekend. Andy Grammer on that back home song, Beasley Coliseum Friday night. A lot of dads are going to be charged up, fired up, being with their kid through that weekend. What a great time, right? Cougar Prawl Fieldhouse is at 5:15. That's where the bus rolls up with the coaches, butches, the cheerleaders, the band, and that's at 5:15 at the Fieldhouse. If you're coming over from the west side, don't forget about the detour that's east of Othello. Make sure you allow yourself an extra 30 minutes. There's a detour. They're taking out a bridge, and so that's right on Highway 26 at Othello. It's going to give you a little bit of detour, and that's also coming back. Okay, so a little bit of a 30-minute delay each way. Kickoff 7:45, ESPN National Prime Time. Cougs favored 10.5 points. Cloudy, right? It's going to be temperatures in the low 50s to upper 40s. It's going to be a little chilly for the Berkeley boys, who are 5-3. Cougs 7-1. Cal leads the series 47-27-5. And, of course, the last time, Cal has just got our number, right? Last year, 37-3. We only got a field goal out of that game with Luke Falk, and 37-3 we lost. And Cougs, of course, number 8 in the CFP polls. We debuted at number 8. So nice, right? By the way, AP and Colts' poll just worthless. I mentioned this earlier on the first half of the podcast Coug. It's noise, it's worthless, and it really doesn't mean anything until week 9 or 10, right? I mean, literally. I mean, right? The teams shake out. And so take a look at Washington, right? They were in the top 10 all season long, or half the season. Now where are they? They're like 26. They're out of the top 25. So, by the way, Cal defeated, listen to this stat. Cal defeated, the last time Cal defeated an AP top 10 team on the road was 1969. Now, can you believe that? Now, think about that. And it was Indiana, the Hoosiers, the last time the Berkeley boys beat a top 10 opponent was 1969. Okay, and on the road, okay, and that's a long time ago. You're talking a long time ago. Mungo Jerry in the Summertime came out in 1970. Wow, so that's a long time ago. So Indiana Hoosiers on the road, and it's been a long time. So since then, Cal is 0-37. when facing a top 10 team on the road. 0-37. Wow. So coming to Martin, they're 5-3 and 2-3 in conference play. Those wins coming off against, one of those wins were Oregon State. Our road game with Colorado, November 10th, doesn't look nearly as challenging as it did 3 weeks ago. The Buffs have lost 3 straight. Most recently, they blew a 28-point home lead advantage against Oregon State to hand the Beavs their first win at Folsom Field since 2014. And so next, Colorado's got Arizona, and who's going to start for the Wildcats, right? Khalil Tate has been limping. He's got a bum ankle, so he looked okay Saturday night, but they've got some backups. And then there's the AC on Friday the 23rd, our annual no-show against Montlake, against the Dogs, right? The last 5 years, Peterson's had our number, and I think it's going to change. There's going to be, it's not if, it's when, okay? We cannot continue to lose to the Dogs year after year after year. I mean, it's just this is our magical year. We've got Minshew for 1 year. It's a magical season. He hasn't let us down. And so, Peterson's trying to sort things out after losing to Cal 12-10 on Saturday. And as you know, Washington State controls its own destiny, right? Destiny for the North. And so we're the only team in the North in the entire Pac-12 with 1 loss, right? Oregon's loss at Arizona on Saturday virtually eliminates the Ducks. So the Cougs hold a crucial tiebreaker over Stanford, right? Since we beat Stanford, we got that advantage over a tiebreaker, and Washington has 2 conference losses already. So meaning that if Stanford beats the Dogs on Saturday, it's likely the Cougs won't, like I mentioned before, the Cougs will not need an AC win, an Apple Cup win to secure the Pac-12 championship game berth if Stanford beats Montlake at Montlake on Saturday, right? So if we continue to win, and it's obviously, winning is everything, and it's up to Godner, right, and company, right? We're calling him Godner, right, with a small G. So it's pretty amazing. So what a great ride. Last year it was great. We were cherishing Luke. I remember saying cherish these moments with Luke Falk, but we had no idea that Minshew would be absolutely amazing. Such a quick release. His reads are amazing. Doesn't hold on to the ball. And we're just, having such a great, it's so fun to have this year, right? So, and, we deserve it. We've had, how many years have we had when we were out? So it's our day. It's our time. It's our day. It's our week. It's our month. It's our year. It's our season. So anyway, Washington State is trending better than it was a year ago. At this time in 2017, the Cougs were coming off a bad loss from Cal and Arizona. And now we've got fresh consecutive wins over ranked teams. We're in a good spot, great leadership, depth, talent, and we're healthy. And not to, we're healthy, and we should be being real thankful that we are healthy. And it's safe to say that the Cougs, we've had a UW problem for the last 5 years, right? Now, though, we've got a Cal problem because the Berkeley boys have won 3 of the last 4 games over the Cougs. That's 3 over the last 4. The Berkeley boys has our number. So we've got a UW thing, and we've got a UW problem, and we've got a Cal Berkeley problem. So, Leach has got to change that. Last season, 7 turnovers in Berkeley following the banner win over USC and Oregon at Autzen was just one of the low points of the season, right? So, you get Justin Wilcox, head coach, is in his second year, former defensive back at Oregon, and he was a defensive coordinator at the UW. Wilcox, replaced the air raid-based offense run by Sonny Dykes, with that power running approach that he's got, and they complement their run first strategy with a 4-3-4 defense. So the results this season has been mixed for Cal, but the Golden Bears jumped out with a 3. If you remember, they were 3-0 at the start of the season. They landed in the AP top 25, and then they proceeded to lose their next 3. A 37-7 loss against the winless back then UCLA. Now Cal has won its last 2 ball games. With beating number 15 UW, perhaps the biggest surprise of the year so far this season. So Cal is, and their defense is really, really good. I mean, it's Stanford and Cal. I think Cal perhaps might have the best defense. So offensively, let's start with this question: who's going to start at quarterback for Wilcox? Right? How many snaps is he going to take? Now, Wilcox used 3 quarterbacks in the beginning of the year. Ross Bowers, Brandon McCulwain, and Chase Garbers. So before pulling Bowers from the rotation and going with McCulwain and Garbers, like I said, he pulled Bowers. And so Wilcox since has rotated between the 2 and completely nearly the same amount of passing attempts between McCulwain and Garbers. So it's going to be interesting if... that being said, Garbers played nearly the whole game in the Beavs, and he's got a better passing stat than McElwain. And so, but Garbers has thrown 9 touchdowns, and McElwain has 2 and has 3 fewer interceptions. So McElwain and running backs Patrick Laird are effective on the ground as a dual threat option, combining 9 scores. And from here, expect Garbers to get out and start. But don't be surprised if we see McElwain. So on the other side of the ball, Cal's defense has been among the conference's best. They are very good. I mean, look what they did to UW, the Dogs. They literally shut them down, and Browning got benched. So tried to pull a spark. Peterson wanted to pull a spark by putting in the other Jake. They've got 5 Jakes as quarterbacks, and Jake Hayner, and that didn't work. That was a disaster. And so there's a meltdown in Seattle going on this past week because because Peterson made a bad decision, put a spark in there, trying to and if you remember, we saw Leach do that with Luke. Was it a year ago or a year and a half ago? He pulled Luke. He benched Luke. Was at Boise State and put in Tyler Helinski. So try to create a spark. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So we got a meltdown in Seattle. And if they lose to Stanford on Saturday, I mean, the entire Husky Nation is just going to give it up. They're going to give it up. And that only creates, that's going to be interesting for the AC, so anyway, back to Cal. They've got one of the Pac-12 stingiest pass defenses, surrendering just an average of 165 yards in the air. And Cal is also tied for the league lead in interceptions at 12, and they've got 3 players with 2 or more picks. So, they've got some guys, right? They've got some really good guys, players to watch. There's Laird. Actually, he looks like a player who can give the Cougs the most trouble defensively, and that's Patrick Laird. So, he's a big back, an effective blocker, but he's also proven to be a capable receiver out of the backfield. So Laird has caught 34 passes on his longest is 29-yard reception. So on the other side, the Bears have a couple of standout linebackers in Jordan Kanashik and Spokane's Evan Weaver. So both are dangerous, 180 tackles. They can force turnovers. Kanashik has caused 3 fumbles, and Weaver had that pick 6 against UW. That was the key with the Bears win over the Dogs on Saturday. So, Leach recruited Weaver out of, I think it was he was at the prep. Gonzaga Prep High School. So, but he went to Berkeley. So Cal has 4 state of Washington players, right? I mentioned Gonzaga Prep's Weaver. There's Bowers from Bothell High School and Ben Moose from Pullman High and Matthew Cindric from Skyline. So Weaver was recruited by Leach, like I mentioned, blew him off, and he's going to have like 50 friends and buddies and relatives coming down from Spokane to watch him on Saturday. So it's going to be a little bit of following for Evan Weaver out of Spokane that's playing for the Cal Bears. So interesting. When Cal has the ball, third downs will be interesting. Washington State's third down defense, we're 3rd in the Pac-12. 39th nationally, and we're allowing conversions of about 35% of the time. The Berkeley boys are converting 41% of the third down opportunities. They're sitting at number 56 in the country. So they've done mostly short yard situations. And how about, don't you love Tracy Clay's halftime adjustments? We'd mentioned that earlier on the first half of the segment here. They've just been awesome, right? Utah racked up 21 first half points. USC had 17 and Oregon State had 24. But, his halftime tweaks have proven to be highly effective. And I'd love to pay Tracy Claeys a huge raise if I could. If I was controlling the coffers at Washington State, WSU Athletics, Tracy Claeys would be getting a raise, and he'd be getting a big raise. We want to keep this guy. He's a great big guy, right? He's a great big fella. We want to keep him, and the guy's amazing. So, Washington State held Utah to a field goal in the second half, and eventually a 28-24 win. And limited Oregon State to 6 third-quarter points before putting the game away. And against Stanford, Claeys made the switch to a zone formation in the second half, dropping an extra man in coverage and ditching the Cougs' bull rush blitz attempts from the first half. The result, Stanford didn't find the end zone until the final 90 seconds of the game. And then until that drive, they only had 97 yards of total offense. So I love how Tracy makes these adjustments during the halftime. I love it. Great. That's what we need, right? We have an upgrade from Grinch, right? So, Saturday night primetime matchups going to feature one of the nation's best defenses and secondaries in the nation's best passing offense, and the Cal coaching staff has got to find a way to slow down the elite Cougs, right? Strength on strength matchups are always fun to watch, and this game Saturday night's it shouldn't disappoint. Two teams trying to carve out for themselves contenders for the Pac-12 in years to come, right? Our advantage with the air raid and Minshew making decisions quickly identifies, whether or not the defense is on man or zone coverage. Wonderful about Minshew, how he has all that power. He can make decisions quickly, identify, whether the defense is going with man or zone coverage. Like I said, the receivers essentially have two options in the air raid. When Cal shows man, our receivers will proceed through the air and the routes, the routes that are planned. And when Cal shows zone, the receivers will shorten their intended route drop right into the soft part of the zone. And in this scenario, Minshew he progresses through each one of his reads and focuses on the receiver, on finding the open receiver. So he does it beautifully, does it quick. To do that in a matter of seconds is amazing. So we rely heavily on our wide receivers, our screens, to push the ball downfield and simulate a rushing attack. We can also run the ball effectively out of the backfield. So only does Cal's defense have to worry about a screen or a vertical attack on each play, but they also have to worry about the key on our running game, right? So we could chew them up on the ground with Williams and Borghi, right? So remember, Minshew leads the country in passing and is a mobile threat on the ground with 10 touchdowns this season. So interesting to watch how the Bears' Cam Bynum squares up against Desmond Patman, right? Patman leads the Cougs receiving with 578 yards. How about Desmond Patman? We haven't talked about him very much. Wow. Just an incredible talent. He's just emerging recently in the Pac-12 play. Take a look at that video on that Pac-12 drive. It's just amazing that I'd mentioned about. Desmond's biggest games have come against Oregon, Stanford, and Utah. But however, with many great receivers, when one receiver gets bottled up, right, another one breaks loose for a personal best. So you can understand the immense pressure that Cal's defense has that they're going to have all night long under the lights, right? Especially how loud it's going to be at Martin on Dad's Weekend. We're going to beat you several ways, right? We've got several players, both through the air and on the ground. Nothing new. It's how we run our offense, touch to stop, very, very, very tough to stop. And they're sitting there scratching their heads. How are they going to do it? David Shaw tried. He's tried 4 years in a row, three years in a row, and Oregon 4 years in a row. We got to get Cal, right? And so how do you stop us, right? Gardner finds a way, and I say Gardner, right? Gardner. So we're doing a play off words, and I'm not saying he's a god, but it's fun to call him Gardner with a little G. We haven't seen this in a long time, and it just he has not failed yet. Minshew has not let us down yet. So pretty consistent. The Cal defense is capable of keeping the Bears and keeping them in check. And, the Washington game was a perfect example of just how they dominated the Huskies. And the Bears also have the benefit of dominating their style of defense last year at Memorial Stadium when they were knocking off the Cougs out of contention for a top 5 ranking. I mean, they literally blew us out last year. So there's several advantages we have over Cal. Remember, it's going to be louder at Martin, perhaps way colder than Northern California, right? I mean, like I said, it's going to be in the high 40s, low 50s. And, Berkeley Cal has struggled against mobile quarterbacks. Even last week with Jake Browning, they were able to get a couple of third down conversions early in the game with by the way of his legs. But, Cal has to respect Gardner Minshew as a runner and also as a, he can pick you apart both ways. So, I'm sure they've got a lot of respect for us. We're going to get them through the air. We're going to get them through the ground. So anyway, is there any defense in the country that can slow us down? If there's one, if there's one in the Pac-12, it's going to be Cal. So, it's going to be interesting. I just don't think they have the offensive weapons to put a lot of points up Saturday night. And going to be interesting. It's going to be also interesting how much energy the Cougs are going to have. This is a 7:45 game, right? Now, granted, they're 18 to 22-year-olds. So, energy, but the game is a night game, and it's a very, very, very late game. So let's hope and believe we've got the energy. The Cougs come out and play all 4 quarters solid. I don't believe Cal has the offensive. They don't have the offensive weapons to beat us. They have the defense to stop us, but they don't have the offense to put points on the board. I'd be very surprised. They got a couple of great guys, but here we go again. Let's have a great Saturday, right? Hey, that's about it for this episode of the Podcast Coug. Don't forget about the extra. And by the way, it's we're falling back Saturday night with your clocks. So Sunday morning we're falling back on standard time. So anyway, don't forget about the extra time on that detour on Highway 26. We're going to catch you next week. Enjoy football Saturday and go Cougs.
You've been listening to the Podcast Coug Radio Network with your host, James Laurie. The Podcast Coug is your weekly Coug On Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. This has been a presentation of the Podcast Coug Radio Network. Find us at podcastcoug.com.